She's cursed to faint at every touch. Only the Alpha King's hands revive her. The kingdom of Ilaria stretched beneath a sky forever touched by twilight. Mist clung to the stone towers like whispering ghosts, and the forests beyond the walls murmured secrets of forgotten magic. In the heart of this land, the Lady Seraphine walked through corridors lined with tapestries that depicted ancestors with proud faces and fierce eyes. But Seraphine herself carried no pride, only a careful distance from the world, for she bore a curse older than the oldest king in the kingdom. At every human touch she would faint, her body collapsing as if the world itself sought to swallow her. Her life had been one of careful isolation. Tutors had taught her the arts of knowledge, music, and diplomacy, but none could teach her how to touch another human being without fear. Even her family had learned to avoid her. Friends had long vanished, leaving her with shadows and servants whose glances were wary and hands hesitant. On this day, the castle was alive with an unusual energy. A royal celebration had been called to honor the ascension of the new Alpha King, Kalen. Whispers of his power traveled faster than the wind through the halls. He was a king unlike any the kingdom had seen. Strong, commanding, with hands that legend said could heal, revive, or bind life itself. Eyes. Stories claimed he could touch a soul and awaken it, and that even the dead would stir beneath his palms. Seraphine's heart tightened. The thought of being near such power made her wary. She had spent years hiding from ordinary touch. How could she endure the hands of a king whose very touch was said to hold life? She considered retreating to her chambers, but curiosity, and perhaps a secret longing, urged her to step forward. The great hall was alive with nobles, their silks gleaming, their jewels sparkling like captured starlight. Laughter rang and glasses clinked, but Seraphine moved like a ghost among them, silent and cautious. Every hand that accidentally brushed hers sent a shiver through her body. The last time it had happened, she had collapsed to the floor, heart racing, fear consuming her, until a stranger's gentle touch had revived her. But that stranger had been a healer, not a king. Her thoughts scattered when she glimpsed him. Kalen stood at the center of the hall, taller than most men, his presence like a shadow that drew all eyes. His dark hair fell over his forehead, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds, deep and unreadable. Even from a distance, Seraphine felt as if he saw her, not the mask she wore for the world, but the fragile woman beneath it. The hall buzzed as the king's gaze swept across the crowd. Seraphine tried to retreat, but fate, or perhaps cruel chance, intervened. A servant, carrying a tray of wine, stumbled, and one of the goblets tipped, spilling its contents across the floor. Seraphine instinctively stepped forward to help, and in that instant, a hand grazed her arm. She felt the familiar pull of darkness. Her vision blurred, the world tilted, and she fell, her body crumpling to the floor. Gasps filled the hall, and nobles hurried to step back. Best for a heartbeat, the room was frozen in stunned silence. Then Kalen moved. He crossed the hall with impossible speed and knelt beside her. His hands were strong yet gentle, and when they touched her, the darkness that gripped her body evaporated. Pass. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gasped for breath, seeing his face above hers, calm and commanding. "You are safe," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "Do not fear me." Seraphine's own voice failed her. She could not form words, could only stare, her heart hammering in awe and terror. It was true. Only his hands had revived her. Every tale she had heard, every legend whispered in the halls of Ilaria had been true. Kalen rose and extended his hand, a gesture of offer and command intertwined. Seraphine felt the pull of both dread and desire. She wanted to step away, to flee from this force she could not resist, yet something deeper within her urged her to remain. "Who are you?" she finally managed, her voice trembling. I am Kaelin, king of Ilaria, he replied, his eyes softening for a fleeting moment. And you are cursed. But not beyond hope. Seraphine shook her head. I cannot. I cannot allow anyone to touch me. I have spent my life alone. I cannot. Ah. Kaelin studied her with an intensity that made her heart ache. And yet here you are in my hall, facing me. Perhaps alone has become too heavy a burden.
A chill ran through her. How did he know?
Could he see the fear that clung to her like a second skin? She wanted to step back, but her legs felt rooted to the floor. You must understand, Kaelin continued, his voice steady and certain, that your curse is rare. Few can break it, fewer still with a hand such as mine. But I can. Seraphine's breath caught. She wanted to reject him, to run to her chambers and hide, yet the truth of her isolation pressed against her chests like a weight she could no longer bear alone. She did not know if she could trust him, if she even should. But the thought of fainting yet again without him filled her with an unbearable fear. I cannot be touched, she whispered, tears pricking at her eyes. I have tried to live without it, without anyone ever touching me. But if I faint again...
You heard, Kaelin said firmly.
I will not let it happen. The hall seemed to fall silent around them. Nobles whispered behind their fans and hands, but Seraphine could not hear them. All she could hear was the sound of her own heart and the deep, steady pulse of Kaelin's presence near her. Why me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Why can you touch me? Why does it matter? Kaelin's expression softened. Because I am bound to you now, whether you wish it or not. Your curse and your life are linked to mine in ways you cannot yet see. Seraphine's mind spun. Fast. She had spent her life trying to avoid contact, to remain invisible, to exist without fear of collapsing at another's hand. And now she was bound to this king, this stranger whose eyes could pierce through the walls she had built around herself. Brace. The evening wore on, and Seraphine could not leave. Kaelin's gaze never faltered, and with every glance, he seemed to read deeper into her, into the shadows of fear and longing she had buried for years. At dinner, he sat near her, though conversation was difficult. Any accidental brush against his hand made her pulse race, made her heart stutter in a way she could not control. Bed. Yet he never let go, never treated her as weak or fragile, only with careful, commanding patience. As the night deepened, Seraphine found herself drawn into a garden that lay beyond the castle walls. Moonlight spilled across the fountains and the stone paths, painting the world in silver and shadow. Kaelin followed her silently, respecting the fragile distance she still required, yet moving close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. Bah! You fear me, he said softly, as if stating a fact rather than asking. I do, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I cannot help it. And yet, you have not fled, he observed. Why? Seraphine hesitated, then looked away, focusing on the moonlit petals at her feet. Because perhaps there is no one else who could save me, and perhaps I do not wish to be saved alone. Kaelin's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, as he knelt beside her again. Then we will face it together, he said. Whatever your curse holds, whatever your fear is, You will not face it alone. Not while I am here. Seraphine felt a shiver of emotion, a mix of fear, longing, and a strange flicker of hope. It was terrifying to trust someone so completely, to know that only his hands could restore her, and yet the thought that she might finally be seen, finally not entirely alone, made her chest ache with longing. The wind whispered through the garden, carrying the scent of roses and something older, something powerful. Seraphine felt the weight of the night, of the kingdom, and of the life she had lived in isolation pressing against her. And yet, in the midst of it all, Kaelin's presence anchored her. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining what it would mean to surrender, not completely, but just enough to trust that she might survive the night, the curse, and perhaps even herself. When she opened them again, Kaelin was watching her. His storm-colored eyes were filled with something she could not name: protection, longing, power, and perhaps even a promise. "You will stay in the castle tonight," he said gently. "The night is not safe for one like you, not alone." Seraphine nodded silently, a part of her resisting, another part quietly relieved. She felt the tension of the day, the fear and the longing, twist into something unfamiliar, something like anticipation. As she turned to follow him inside, her hand brushed his. Just a fleeting touch, and for the first time, she did not faint. Instead, she felt a spark, a whisper of life, as if the world itself had paused to witness the beginning of something dangerous, something transformative, Bass. And in that instant she knew that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The morning sun spilled over the towers of Ilaria, casting long shadows across the courtyards. Lady Seraphine sat alone in her chambers, the heavy curtains drawn, trying to steady her racing heart. She had survived the night in the castle, though every movement reminded her of the delicate balance she now lived with. Her curse, once a solitary terror, had become a chain linking her to the Alpha King. And yet, for the first time, that chain felt strangely protective. A soft knock broke her thoughts. "Enter!" she called, her voice cautious. The door opened, and a servant stepped in, bowing low. "The king requests your presence in the garden, my lady. He says it is important." Despet. Seraphine swallowed her apprehension. Every step toward Kaelin was a test of courage, and she had no choice but to walk forward. The hall seemed longer than ever, the tapestries lining the walls silent witnesses to her tension. When she reached the garden, she found him waiting beside the fountain, the water reflecting the morning light in ripples that seemed almost alive. Kaelin's posture was relaxed, yet there was a strength in his presence that made the air between them feel charged.
"Good morning, Lady Seraphine," he said, his voice calm, low, and deliberate.
"You sleep well?" She nodded, unsure how to speak. The memory of his hands on her arm the previous night made her pulse quicken. She kept her hands clasped in front of her, a small shield against a world that had always been dangerous to her.
"Do you wish to leave?" Kaelin asked, noticing her hesitation.
"I can understand if you do. I will not force you." "No. Bess. I do not wish to leave. But, Bear, I am afraid." Kaelin stepped closer, careful to keep a respectful distance.
Fear is natural. You have lived with it your entire life.
But fear alone cannot define you. It can guide you, yes, but it does not have to imprison you. Seraphine looked at him, his words simple yet carrying weight she could not fully understand. He did not speak like others, with flattery or command. He spoke with certainty, with knowledge of strength and patience.
Why are you helping me?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly.
Why would a king care about someone like me? Cursed and
fragile. Kaelin's eyes darkened for a moment, as if recalling some private memory.
because you are not just someone like you. You are a woman of spirit.
You carry strength beneath your fragility. And because it is the duty of a king to protect those who cannot protect themselves, especially when their lives are intertwined with mine. The words struck her, and she lowered her gaze. She had spent so long hiding that even recognition of her worth was startling. She wanted to believe him, but the fear that had defined her life was difficult to ignore. "Then what do I do?" she asked. "I cannot be touched. I cannot allow anyone near me." Kaelin approached one step closer. "And yet, you have allowed me. Every time you fell yesterday, I revived you." That trust, however small, is the first step. Seraphine felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wanted to retreat, to regain her walls, but a part of her longed to understand him, to learn how someone so powerful could choose patience and protection instead of fear and domination. "Today," Kaelin said, "you will not leave the garden. You will walk, you will breathe, and you will speak with me. We will learn each other's boundaries, and perhaps, slowly, your curse will teach you less fear." Psst. Seraphine hesitated. Every instinct in her screamed to run, but the calm in Kaelin's eyes gave her courage. She took the first step forward and then another, feeling the morning air on her face, the sound of birds mingling with the faint ripple of the fountain. They walked in silence for a while, the tension of unspoken words between them. Finally, Kaelin spoke, his voice almost a whisper.
Your curse is more than a burden.
It is a test. And you are not the first to suffer it. I have seen women like you, strong and afraid, who believed they could face the world alone. None did. But you, perhaps you will. Bet. I do not know if I am strong. I do not even know if I am brave. Strength is not always shown in bold acts, Kaelin said, stopping to turn toward her. Sometimes it is shown in survival, in persistence.
In choosing to face the day when the world has only given you pain.
She had never been seen in this way, not as a fragile creature, not as a helpless victim, but as someone who could matter, even in the shadow of her curse. The morning passed in careful steps. Kaelin showed her how to navigate the garden without touching others, how to move gracefully even when fear rose. And though the steps were small, each one built a bridge of trust. By afternoon, Seraphine felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had faced the world beyond her chamber and lived. She had walked near the Alpha King and felt his calm presence without collapsing. For the first time, she allowed herself a small spark of hope. But the peace of the day was fragile. The castle walls held more than light and protection. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Courtiers with hidden agendas noticed her, noting her curse not as a tragedy, but as a tool for manipulation. Some saw her as weak, some as dangerous, and others as a key to secrets they had long sought. One noble, Lord Draven, lingered too close during the afternoon gathering, his gaze calculating. Seraphine sensed his intent immediately. The instinct honed from years of caution. She backed away, but her movement brushed Kaelin's hand. Not a deliberate touch, but a collision of movement in the crowded hall. The darkness hit her instantly. She felt the world fold in on itself, the floor rushing toward her, And then warmth. Kaelin's hands were there, steadying her, reviving her as he had before. Her eyes opened to his storm-colored gaze, filled not with irritation or annoyance, but with concern and unspoken warning.
"You cannot let anyone harm you," he said, lifting her to her feet. "Not here."
Bed. Not now.
I tried," she whispered, trembling. "I cannot control it." "You are learning," Kaelin replied gently.
Every time you fall, every time you rise, it teaches you something. You are stronger than you realize, Seraphine. Stronger than your curse believes you are. Her chest ached at the words.
She wanted to argue, to protest, but her body and mind were too drained. Instead, she nodded, letting him guide her to a quieter hall where whispers could not reach them.
Hours passed in cautious conversation. They spoke not of politics, nor of the whispers that surrounded them, but of smaller things. The taste of sunlight on the garden stones, the sound of the fountain's water, the quiet beauty of a castle, often overshadowed by shadows. In these moments, Seraphine felt a connection she had never known. She realized that Kaelin was not just a king, not just a man of power, but someone who saw her, not as a curse, not as a fragile woman, but as someone worth attention, worth protection, worth understanding. And yet trust did not come easily. Every time her hand moved near his, every step, every accidental brush, her pulse raced. Every revival reminded her of the delicate thread on which her life now hung. She wanted to push him away, to assert her independence, but the thought of losing his presence filled her with a cold dread. The tension between them grew, not with words, but with the unspoken dance of proximity and distance. Kaelin never forced contact, but he never let her retreat completely. His presence was a constant reminder that she was not alone, that she could not face this world entirely on her own. By evening, Seraphine was exhausted, yet a part of her longed for the night. The quiet, the moonlight, and the rare moments of privacy offered the space she needed to reflect on what had happened. She realized she was no longer terrified of him. Not entirely. There was fear, yes, but also curiosity, a strange longing that she did not fully understand. Kaelin appeared at her window as the last rays of sunlight faded.
"You should rest," he said softly.
"Tomorrow will be harder. You will face more than fear."
You will face choice, and I will be here whether you wish it or not. Braish. She nodded, unable to speak, her thoughts tangled. The day had been a lesson in fear, trust, and the strange tension of dependence. And though she had survived, she knew the true challenge was only beginning. For outside the castle, in the shadows of the courtyard, eyes watched. Not human, not entirely. A presence stirred, sensing the link between the cursed girl and the Alpha King. Whatever it was, it moved closer, waiting for a moment when weakness could be exploited. And Seraphine, weary and fearful, did not yet know how fragile her newfound bond with Kaelin truly was. The castle of Elaria was quiet in the morning, yet the air carried a restless energy, as if the walls themselves whispered warnings. Lady Seraphine sat by her window, staring out at the mist-wrapped gardens. Her mind was a swirl of thoughts, each heavier than the last. The shadow she had sensed yesterday had not vanished. It lingered in the corners of her mind, a silent reminder that the world outside her rooms was neither gentle nor safe. Kaelin entered without a sound, his presence as steady and commanding as ever. "You are restless," he observed. "The night did not bring you peace." "I cannot stop thinking," Seraphine admitted, her voice barely above a whisper.
Of the curse? Of you? Of what might happen if I fail?
Kaelin stepped closer, hands folded behind him.
It is natural to worry, he said, but you cannot control all that happens, Seraphine.
You can only control how you face it. Her eyes flicked toward him, searching for understanding.
And what if I cannot face it? What if my curse, my weakness, brings danger to you? Kalen's gaze softened, though the storm in his eyes remained.
Then I will face it with you.
You are not alone. Not now. Not ever. The sincerity in his words made her chest tighten. For the first time, she imagined what it might be like to live without fear, to feel strength not just in solitude, but in the presence of someone who understood and accepted her fragility. Then teach me, she said. Teach me how to live with it, without letting it control me. Kalen's expression shifted, and for the first time he looked almost human, almost vulnerable. It is not simple, he warned. Your curse is ancient. It is tied to your bloodline, to a pact made long ago. Understanding it fully will take more than courage. It will take trust, patience, and sacrifice. Seraphine felt a shiver at his words. Sacrifice? Kalen nodded. The curse is not merely a weakness.
It is a test of connection. Every time I revive you, a bond is formed between us.
The longer it lasts, the more entwined our fates become. One day, the choice may be yours, and mine, to face the consequences. Her stomach twisted. She had never known another person so intimately, yet here was a man whose hands held not only the power to revive her, but also a link to her very life. Bah! Fear and longing twisted together, making it difficult to breathe. For days, Kalen guided her through small routines, teaching her to move through the castle with awareness, to navigate the courtyards without risk, and to meet others with careful poise. Every step tested her courage, and every accidental touch reminded her of the precariousness of her existence. Yet beneath the fear she felt a strange exhilaration, a sense of being alive in a way she had never known.
One afternoon, she wandered into the castle's hidden library, a place she had never seen before.
Ancient tomes lined the shelves, some so old that their leather bindings seemed ready to crumble. Dust hung in the air, illuminated by slivers of sunlight that broke through the high windows. Curiosity overcame caution. She ran her fingers along the spines, reading the faded titles. Many spoke of history, of magic and of curses, of bloodlines bound by secret pacts. Her heart thudded as she realized the possibility that her curse was no accident, but a legacy, a punishment or test that had been waiting for her for generations. Kalen appeared behind her without warning, though she did not startle. "You seek answers," he said softly. "I cannot give all, but perhaps I can guide you." She turned to him, eyes wide. "Tell me, what do you know of it, of my curse?" He pulled a chair beside her and gestured for her to sit.
Your curse is old, older than this castle. It was born from a pact between mortals and forces beyond our world.
Women of your bloodline were bound to fear human touch, to collapse at its brush. But the pact included a condition. Only one with true alpha strength, body and soul, could awaken you, could give you life without harm. Seraphine swallowed. "And that is why, you..." Kalen nodded, the weight of responsibility in his eyes. "Because my hands are bound to life in ways few understand. But the bond is not without cost. Every revival links us. The closer we become, the more fragile we both are. One day, the curse may demand more than either of us can give." Fear and fascination battled in her chest. She had never imagined intimacy could feel so dangerous, So necessary, and yet she could not turn away from him, nor from the knowledge that her survival depended on his strength, and, unexpectedly, his care. Days passed, and their bond deepened. They spoke in quiet moments, often in the library, often in the gardens. Words of trust mingled with glances, gestures, and shared silences. Seraphine began to understand that Kaelin was more than a king. He was a man who had lived alone with his power, feared for what it could demand, and yet had chosen patience and protection rather than domination. But their fragile peace shattered the evening a rider arrived at the castle gates, bearing a message sealed with a symbol Seraphine recognized all too well. Lord Draven, the noble who had lingered too close before, was moving against them. "He seeks to capture you," Kaelin said, reading the message aloud. His voice was calm, but the tension in his body betrayed the danger. "He knows of your curse and sees it as a weapon. He will not hesitate." Seraphine felt the familiar pull of fear, sharp and suffocating.
What can we do?
Kaelin's hand brushed hers as he passed, and she felt the spark of life and calm she had learned to rely on. "We will face it together," he said simply.
"You will not face him alone." Night fell, and the castle prepared for what was to come. Seraphine's rooms were secured, and Kaelin positioned guards along the outer walls. But he did not leave her side, even in the quiet hours. She could sense the tension in his every movement, the quiet storm of a man ready to protect what mattered most, no matter the cost. At midnight the shadow finally appeared. The gates had been breached, silently, with skillful hands and quiet feet. Seraphine, frightened, barely had time to react before figures emerged in the moonlight, intent on capturing her. Kaelin was beside her in an instant. His hands moved with speed and precision, deflecting attackers, guiding her through hidden passages, reviving her each time she stumbled in fear or exhaustion. Her heart raced not only with terror, but with the strange exhilaration of dependence, of feeling his strength supporting her every step. Finally, they reached a secluded tower high above the castle walls. Seraphine's legs trembled with exhaustion, her pulse erratic, but Kaelin's hands were steady as ever.
He helped her to a window ledge, his voice low and commanding.
"You are safe for now," he said. "But your curse, it is not merely a test of fear. It is a test of connection. The deeper our bond grows, the greater the cost if we fail."
Seraphine's chest ached. I do not understand."
Perspective.
"Why me? Why this curse?" Kaelin's eyes, storm dark and serious, met hers.
"Because you are strong. Strong enough to face it. Strong enough to survive it. And because you are not meant to face it alone. Not ever." The weight of his words settled over her. She had feared dependence all her life, yet now she realized that it was not weakness to rely on someone, not if that reliance was built on trust and care. She looked at him, really looked, and felt a warmth in the midst of terror. A promise that she was no longer alone in a world that had always sought to crush her. But even as the bond deepened, the shadow of danger remained. Beyond the castle walls, Lord Draven and his allies lurked, seeking to exploit her curse, And in the quiet of the tower, as Seraphine leaned against Kaelin, she realized that the next choice would not be simple. Survival, trust, and perhaps even love were now intertwined, and every decision carried weight she had never known. And in that moment, as the wind whispered against the stones, both knew that the night was only the beginning. Their bond had been forged in fear and revival, and the trials to come would demand courage, sacrifice, and a connection deeper than either had yet imagined. The night was thick with fog curling through the castle like living fingers. Lady Seraphine stood at the top of the highest tower, her heart pounding. She could hear the distant sounds of struggle echoing through the halls below, the clash of swords, the shouts of guards, and the faint, eerie silence of those who had fallen. Lord Draven's forces had returned, stronger than before, drawn by the power of her curse. Kylan appeared beside her without a sound, as if he had emerged from the shadows themselves. His storm-dark eyes scanned the horizon, calculating, unwavering. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Seraphine swallowed her fear. She had learned much since that first night, about her curse, about herself, and about the strange bond that connected her to Kylan. Burge. Her body was still fragile, her curse still dangerous, yet she no longer felt powerless. "I am ready," she said. Kylan nodded, reaching out his hand. She hesitated for a heartbeat, feeling the familiar pull of fear and longing. But she remembered the lessons of the past days. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. She placed her hand in his, feeling the surge of warmth and strength that always followed. Together they descended the tower, moving with the quiet confidence of those who had faced death and returned. The castle corridors were dim, the shadows deep, and every step reminded Seraphine of the dangers that lurked around them. But with Kylan at her side, she felt the tether of the curse transform from a chain into a thread of connection, binding them in a shared purpose. They reached the great hall just as the last of Draven's men pressed forward. Seraphine's breath caught, but Kylan's hands gripped hers firmly. "Breaths, remember," he said. "Trust the bond. We face this together." The battle began. Kylan moved with the precision and power of a man who had mastered both body and will. Seraphine followed his lead, her steps careful yet deliberate. Whenever fear threatened to overwhelm her, Kylan's hands found hers, reviving her and guiding her forward. The bond between them grew stronger with every moment, every shared breath, every silent understanding. Amid the chaos, Seraphine realized something important. Her curse, once a source of fear and weakness, was now a catalyst for trust and strength. The curse required connection, and she had chosen to face it not alone, but with someone who cared, someone whose hands could not only revive her, but sustain her courage.
As the battle reached its peak, Lord Draven himself appeared, stepping into the hall like a shadow of menace.
His eyes locked on Seraphine, and he raised his hand, intending to seize her. Kylan moved instantly, intercepting him with a force that sent Draven staggering backward. "You will not touch her," Kylan commanded, his voice echoing through the hall. "Not while I live." Draven sneered, but he had underestimated the bond between the Alpha King and the Cursed Lady. Every time he lunged toward her, Kylan was there, guiding, protecting, reviving. Seraphine's fear gave way to determination. She found a courage she had never known, a strength born from trust and connection. In a decisive moment, Kylan and Seraphine moved together, a dance of unity and power. His hand found hers, her hand met his, and for the first time they acted as one. The curse that had once made her fragile now anchored her, linking their movements and intentions in perfect harmony. Draven faltered, realizing that he was not facing a frightened girl alone, but two souls bound in courage and love. Finally, Draven retreated, defeated not by strength alone, but by the unbreakable bond between Seraphine and Kylan. The hall fell silent, the tension of the night lifting like fog in the morning sun. Seraphine sank to her knees, exhausted, trembling, yet alive. Kylan knelt beside her, his hands steady and warm. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concern softening his fierce gaze. "I am safe," she whispered, resting her head against his shoulder. For the first time, she felt truly seen, truly protected, and truly free from the fear that had ruled her life. Kalen lifted her gently, carrying her to a quieter chamber. He set her down, still holding her hands. Your curse, he said thoughtfully, is broken, but only because you faced it. Not alone, but with me. The choice to trust, to connect. That was your true power. Seraphine looked into his eyes, the realization dawning on her. Barris. She had spent so long fearing touch, fearing connection, fearing the strength of others, that she had never imagined the courage it would take to embrace it. And yet here she was, alive and whole, bound to a man who had taught her that vulnerability could be a source of strength. I never thought I could, she began, then paused, struggling to find words that could capture the depth of her feelings. Brass. I never thought I could be strong. Kalen smiled softly, the storm in his eyes fading into warmth. It is in trusting, in connection, in choosing to face the world, even when it terrifies you.
You are strong, Seraphine.
But stronger than you know. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were not of fear. They were tears of relief, of understanding, and of a love that had grown quietly, steadily, through fear, trust, and shared struggle. She reached up, tentatively brushing her fingers against his cheek. He leaned closer, their foreheads touching gently. "And you have given me something I did not know I needed," he whispered. "You have given me trust. You have given me connection. And you have given me love." Seraphine felt her chest tighten, a surge of emotion that left her breathless. She had feared touch all her life, yet now she could not imagine letting it go. The bond between them was no longer fragile or forced. It was chosen, nurtured, and powerful. They remained together in the quiet chamber, hands entwined, hearts beating in unison. Outside, the castle began to settle, the danger fading. Yet the memory of fear lingered as a reminder of what they had faced and what they had overcome. As dawn broke over Ilaria, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Seraphine and Kalen stood together on the balcony, looking out over the kingdom. The mist lifted, revealing gardens, towers, and forests that seemed to shimmer with possibility. "You have changed," Kalen said, his hand finding hers. "Not because of me, but because of your own courage."
You faced your fear and chose connection. That is true strength."
Seraphine squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth and power that had once been a source of terror, now a source of life. "And you have taught me that strength can be shared, that fear can be faced together, and that even a curse can be transformed." Kalen smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "We have both changed," he said softly. "Not just by surviving, but by trusting, by facing the shadows, and by embracing the bond between us. The world may still be dangerous, but we are stronger together than we could ever be apart." The wind whispered through the castle towers, carrying the scent of flowers and the promise of a new day. Yes. Seraphine leaned into Kalen, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart, the strength of his hands, and the warmth of a bond that had survived fear, danger, and the weight of ancient magic. Together, they knew that whatever challenges the future held, they would face them not as solitary souls, but as partners bound by trust, courage, and love. And in that quiet golden morning, Ilaria seemed to breathe a little easier, as if the kingdom itself had sensed that a new era had begun. One shaped not by fear, curses, or power alone, but by connection, trust, and the strength of hearts united.